Welcome back to another project with James. Take a look at this. How fun is this? By the request of my 9-year-old son, today's project is a lemonade stand. So I designed a lemonade stand with the kids in mind. It needed to be really strong, which it is, but it also needed to be really light. I wanted the kids to be able to move it around by themselves, and my 4-year-old can push this down the sidewalk. But one of the best things about this is it's so simple to make. If you can cut a piece of wood, if you can put in a screw, then you can make this. So without wasting any time, let's get right to it. Let me show you how you can make this. The first thing we're going to do is cut some rectangles out of a piece of plywood. This is a 1/2 inch thick piece of plywood. It happens to be nice and new. Yours does not need to be nice and new. If you've got some scraps laying around, by all means use those. You just need enough plywood for these 6 pieces right here. These are the sizes you need to cut out. I'm going to label these 1 through 6 so we can keep track of them. You can pause the video right here, or if you're watching this on your phone, you can take a screenshot to refer back to. Now I'm going to show you an easy way to cut these out. Mark the width of the piece you're going to cut on both sides. If you have a chalk line, you can snap a line between the two, or you can use a really straight piece of wood and use it to mark the line. I've clamped that same piece of wood along the side to act as a guide so we get our cut nice and straight. One thing to keep in mind is that a lot of saws have a standard distance from the edge of the guide to the blade cut of 1.5 inches. Then take that piece that we just cut, measure the length of it, make your mark. If you're confident enough, you can skip the guide and just do it freehand. The guide just helps it to get a little bit straighter. So that's how you cut out those little rectangle pieces. Just do the same thing for all 6 of those pieces. Take plywood piece number 1, and we're going to cut some 2x4s to fit perfectly inside the perimeter, just like this. Cutting these is really easy. It's just a simple straight cut. I'm going to use this miter saw, so I'll make my measurement, line up the blade, and then just cut it straight. Let's connect these 4 pieces that we just cut together in this rectangle. We're going to do that by using a screw going at an angle from one piece to the other. Now that can get kind of tricky if you're doing it freehand. You can do it freehand if you want to, but I'm going to use this cool contraption here called a Kreg jig. This will help us pre-drill some holes at the perfect angle so our screws go in just perfect to hold these 2 pieces together. First, you're going to put an X where you want to drill your holes so that when you lift the wood up, you don't get confused on what side. Put the X right along this flat part here, center it, and just snap it shut. That'll hold it nice and tight. Then you're going to take the drill bit that's provided by Kreg jig, and you're going to drill down in these 2 outside holes because we want to put 2 screws in. And now we have 2 perfect holes for our screws to go into. Kreg jig comes with this bit, and also they make these screws to fit perfectly in those holes. So stick the screw in the hole, make sure everything's lined up just right, and then just screw it together. Now just do that same thing on the other 3 corners. I recommend drilling all of the holes first before you actually screw anything together. Now we're going to take this rectangle that we just made, and we're going to cover it up with that first piece of plywood. So we're going to tack this down with some wood screws. Now these are 1.25 inch outdoor screws. You do not have to use this kind. Really, any type of wood screw will work as long as it has the type of head that will sink flat with the wood. Then just line it up as best you can. If it's not absolutely perfect, no big deal. The edges are going to be covered up anyways. Then 3 screws along each side is all you need. This is the base of our lemonade stand. You can set this aside, and we'll come back to this in just a minute. Now we're going to be cutting some 2x2s. These can be found at any home improvement store, and we're going to cut them into these lengths right here. Now you'll notice that a couple of these pieces have a slightly angled cut at the end. We're going to do that really easily by just turning the miter saw to 15 degrees. This is really simple. For the straight cuts, you just measure and cut it straight. For the angled cuts, you just measure, line up your mark, and cut it at the 15-degree angle. So then take these pieces we just cut and arrange them into a shape that looks just like this. And these pieces will make two identical shapes just like this. Now let's fasten all the pieces together. We're going to use one screw per connection. That screw is 3 inches long. We're going to drill a pilot hole first and then just stick the screw in and do that to all of the connections. Now that you've made both of these pieces, lay them down back to back just like this. Take the plywood piece you cut just a minute ago. We designated this one number 2, it's the 18 by 25 inch piece, and line it up with the sides, but do not line it up at the bottom. We're actually going to hang 2 inches out past the bottom. So after you've got the sides straight, measure 2 inches out past the bottom, then we're going to screw it down. Now do that exact same thing with the other piece. Now we're going to take the base that we did first and stand it up together with one of these sides and put it together just like that. Then we're going to put some screws in it right there. And then we'll do the exact same thing to the other side. Now take the plywood piece, put it right across the front like that, and screw that in. This is coming together really nicely. It's always fun to see things take shape like this. Now we're almost done with the structure. We just need a few more supports, some cross pieces. We're going to have one here, we're going to have one here, and we're going to have one here. These are going to support the roof and the shelf that goes right here. We're going to use 2x2s just like we've been using, and we're going to cut them and attach them just like we've been doing. And all three of these happen to be the exact same size, 33 inches. This is the sign that's going to say lemonade, $1, or whatever it is you want it to say. Let's go ahead and screw that on right now too. Now we're going to use that last piece of plywood that we cut earlier to make the countertop right here. Take our last piece of plywood that we cut out, and we're going to cut the corners out. We're going to take a scrap piece of 2x2, put it right in the corner, line it up perfectly, and then mark it with a pencil. And we're going to do that in all 4 corners. Before we cut out the corners, I like to clamp it to the edge of the table just so it's nice and sturdy. You don't have to do that, it just helps out a lot. Now you can use a lot of different things to cut that out. You can use a handsaw if you want to. I think the best way is to use a jigsaw if you have one. Now that we've got the corners clipped out, we're ready to just slide this thing right down in here. And then let's tack it down with some screws. For the roof, I like to use fencing planks, and then I overlap them just like a shingle. Just cut it to whatever length you like. I like mine to hang over the edge about 1.5 inches on all sides, so I measured mine 3 inches longer than this. You can go ahead and put screws in this just like we've done, but I want to show you one other option real quick. There's a lot of places on this project I could have used a pneumatic stapler. I chose to do screws because they're more common and not everybody has a staple gun. However, if you have access to a staple gun, I wanted to show you that option and how quick and easy it can be. This next part is completely optional, but I think it gives it a really cool look. I'm going to take some of those fence slats, just like up on the roof, and I'm going to overlap them on the front like siding. If you choose to do this, cut it perfectly even with the edges of the wood and then screw it or staple it all the way up. Let's do these fence planks on the side too, but this time let's do them up and down. That gives it a little variety, it makes it look really cool. Depending on the size of planks you use, this last one is probably going to extend past the back. I actually like that, so I'm going to leave it, but you can choose to cut that off if you want to. And we've made it. This is the very last thing we have to do. We're going to put the wheels on. Now this is going to be easier than you might think. These wheels come ready to go just like this. They're not very expensive. They're $3 or $4. We're going to use the same wood screws that we've been using throughout the rest of the project. So we're done, and it turned out awesome. You know, you can customize these. You can make them a little bigger, a little smaller. You can paint them. Here's one that my son and I did that's a little wider, a little taller. He's already claimed it and put his name on it. If you're an experienced woodworker, this will probably take you an hour and a half to 2 hours. If you're a newbie, it might take you the better part of a Saturday. But either way, I think you're really going to enjoy making one of these. This was a lot of fun to make. And even if you don't actually end up making one yourself, I always appreciate you watching. You know, my next projects are going to be just as fun, so make sure you come check those out. Thank you again. I'll see you on the next project with James.